Welcome to everyone joining us on Zoom. We are about to go live on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you again to everyone joining us via Zoom. We are about to go live on Facebook. Just give us 1 minute. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. And this is our District 10 Community Connections. My staff, as usual, is standing by here to help us answer questions. So if you have any, please put them on the comment section on Facebook, or if you're on Zoom, enter them in the Q&A section. In April, we actually launched Community Connections, and each week we have a great guest with us. And if you have any ideas for future Community Connection segments, please let us know. Send us your ideas by Facebook, but we'll have a lot more coming up soon. So let me first start by updating everyone on some announcements. The mid-May edition of our newsletter is coming out this weekend, and it's filled with resources and virtual events. I would like to, I'm excited. I actually served on the VTA for more than 6 years, and we are finally, I've heard as of today, BART is opening its services to Berryessa and Milpitas on June 13th. Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, but I'm glad it's happening. The city of San Jose has also reopened its park amenities. So if you're out there and you want to play bocce ball or horseshoes and use some of the tennis courts, you can now, but please make sure to put on face coverings, and just to let you know, the restrooms are not yet open. So face masks are required if you're not running or exercising. Community budget meetings have started, and there's over $70 million of budget deficit that we have to close in this year's budget. And that's besides the $45 million that we already closed for the budget that we are still in. And so we want to hear from you. It's really important to have you guys participate. And let us know what your priorities on spending and what have you. There is going to be a couple more meetings. The next one is Thursday, May 21st at 1:30 p.m. And this is going to outline the proposed 2021 operating and capital budgets, the 5-year capital improvement program, and the proposed fees and charge report. That's all going to be discussed. There's going to be council members on the teleconference coming, Zooming in remotely. And so you guys can also watch this on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, the city's YouTube channel. And to make a public comment during the meeting, email councilmeeting@sanjoseca.gov. Also, I'm excited to announce that we have free COVID-19 testing to all of San Jose's residents. There's 2 sites so far, PAL Stadium in East San Jose and Santa Clara Fairgrounds is the other site that we're having testing. So test sites are open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you do need to schedule an appointment. If you'd like to do that, log on to projectbaseline.com. That's projectbaseline.com. As more on transportation, the California High-Speed Rail Authority is discussing its draft environmental impact report, and there'll be a public hearing on May 27th from 3 to 8 p.m. And so if you'd like to log in and listen to what's happening with high-speed rail, you could log on to meethsrnorcal.org, and we'll have all these links so you don't have to memorize them all. They'll also be in an article in our newsletter. So right now, I am excited to have a special guest, Jeff Raegen, and I'm gonna have Amel from my office introduce him. So please introduce our guest.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And before I do introduce Jeff, I want to remind everyone, if you are joining us via Zoom, to put your questions in the Q&A. And also on Facebook, you can write your questions in the comments. So Jeff comes to us as a private wealth advisor and franchise owner for nearly 20 years. He's a San Jose resident and a graduate of Santa Clara University with a BS in economics. He's been working under the umbrella of Ameriprise Financial Services and holds the Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor and Certified Financial Planner designations. Jeff has been awarded the Ameriprise Circle of Success in both 2017 and 2019, and is a member of the Alameda Business Association, as well as the Silicon Valley Chamber of the Silicon Valley Chamber of Commerce, known as the SVO. So welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amel, and thank you, Councilmember. Very excited to share tonight from the comfort of my home. We're shelter in place here, just like everybody else. And so for tonight, very excited to share different, hopefully, thoughts and pointers that could be helpful for the district residents or other attendees for, how to navigate the unprecedented times we're in. So Councilmember, I'm excited to hear where we want to go.
Yeah, well, I tell you, financial planning and it's right up my alley. I could tell you that I spent 19 and a half years as a financial advisor, advising, folks and small businesses. And, I think you and I are kindred spirits. You actually also graduated from San Jose State University. And I know that you're a District 10 resident, so we got a lot in common. So thank you for joining us. But yeah, these are difficult economic times, and a lot of people are looking at their retirement account, statements, and they're going, "Whoa, what the heck happened?" A few months ago, a couple months ago, would have been even a bigger whoa, right?
Absolutely, these are amazing times that we're dealing with. We come at everything from a financial planning perspective and trying to figure out where do you go. Because we get a lot of questions, especially right now. Clients are asking, where's the market going? Can I retire? Maybe clients are saying, hey, I was planning on retiring here in a year or two. Is that still possible or feasible? Or for a lot of clients that are retired, hey, what's the impact? I think the key thing and the starting message that I'd love to share with everybody is just the importance of not making rash decisions, not trying to time the market, because that is so often so problematic. But it's really, it's kind of a good old fashioned starting point, actually, right? It's grabbing a pen and pad of paper, or maybe a spreadsheet, or of course talking with your advisor if you have one, or a financial planner. But reassessing, where are you? What's going on? And that even applies in the day-to-day, right? There are a whole lot of different financial stimulus items that I'd love to cover here in a second that can help people, because a lot of people are having real financial tough times right now. So I thought a great place to start here for a few minutes would be actually highlighting 6 different ways that the CARES Act has really been injecting money into the economy. So Mel, by chance we have that, those couple of points, I'd love to put them up there. So the first one that I would highlight is that with the CARE stimulus package, it's literally $2 trillion that has been put out there into the economy, into people's pockets, into people's accounts, through businesses, through supporting industries, to be able to make sure that people can pay their bills, pay their obligations. And so the first one there is the direct payments to most Americans. That's the $1,200 per person, $500 for a child, right? It has income limitations, but most, I think, people have been receiving those. If you believe you're eligible, but you haven't, you'd want to go and look into the irs.gov website. The next couple are, I think, quite important and pretty robust changes in the financial planning world. The first one is, of these next three, the increases to unemployment. So we have standard unemployment, which is available over time. There's been three major changes for this. The first is that people are, if eligible for unemployment, can receive up to $600 per week in additional benefit for 4 months. So that's quite a boost to help people who are unemployed to be able to help pay their rent, pay their mortgages. The other next note on that is typically there's a 7-day wait period for unemployment, and that's now backfilled by the federal government to now be a 0-day wait, so immediate benefit. Last key item on that one real quick is that also the availability or the qualification is much wider now, where typically it's W-2 income that is eligible, or W-2 income earners, I should say, that are eligible for unemployment. It is now greatly expanded to include self-employed folks. The next one is the penalty-free distributions for retirement accounts. So the typical rules are that you can't pull money out of a retirement plan, so a 401k or IRA, those type of things. If you're under age 59 and a half, if you do, it's a 10% penalty. That penalty is being waived for this year. So this is a huge opportunity for people if you are in a crunch and need to access some of your own cash to be able to do that. Now, that is a taxable distribution. The additional addendum to this, though, is that it's now, the taxes are due over 3 years. So you can spread it out to reduce that tax bite for yourself. You can also refill it if you take out more than you find that you need and readjust your taxes later. Another very important one in my mind, and this really applies for our retiree clients, is the required minimum distribution rules have been suspended for this year. And so most clients age 70 and a half will, if they have retirement assets, have to take money out per year based on IRS guidelines. Those rules are being suspended. Quick side note, the age 70 and a half rules also changed to age 72 in December of last year. So you want to double check that if you're in that approaching age bracket there. But that's quite a benefit to be able to not take funds out if somebody doesn't require it, especially in retirement. The last two I'll just touch on really fast. The tax deductible charitable contributions went away for a lot of people with the increase in standard deduction in 2017. It's minor, but there's now a $300 above the line deduction that people can take. So helps save a few bucks on taxes. And I think it's also actually very important to reinforce for those with the ability to support charities in a time like this, right? And then last of all is for those with student loans, federal loans have the ability to be deferred until September 2020. From what I understand, you need to contact the lender or the school to be able to do that. And then most other grant and lending, school-based lending programs are also granting that. And so you'll want to reach out to those schools or those lenders as well. So hopefully a good starting point for a lot of different options and opportunities to look through to make sure that people can make it through a tough time like this.
Yeah, this is great information. I had, I haven't been out in the industry for a while. That's, required minimum distribution at 72. That's a new one for me as well. And all the students, I think, will be happy, although that's not much of a, so September 2020 is the
Yes.
deferral period. Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. And we could start with a few questions that we had already received by email, if you don't mind, and then maybe we could take some live questions and then if you have some questions, please submit them. But let's I think we got this question via email. I'm 64 and I was planning to retire this year. Should I still retire?
Absolutely. Like I said, that's actually a question that we kind of heard in various forms over the last a couple months here. So I would think a couple different comments would come to mind for that person and for any person in a similar kind of area. I would think, well, much like I said before, it would be, let's pause. Pen and paper, spreadsheet, there's some different tools out there to track your finances. I would try to first and foremost say, okay, hey, what's going on and what do I want to shoot for, right? So what's incoming in the way of whether it's Social Security, pension, is it going to be retirement plan distributions? What are the sources of income? What's the run rate, so to speak? So what are my goals for spending? What are the assets? And I'd start to try to, kind of take an inventory almost there. That's financial planning at its core. So whether it's on your own or through a program or with an advisor or a planner, that's crucial. From there, I would say probably 2 or 3 things. One is then set a date, right? I think having clarity and defining a date is so important for people. And now you can determine, okay, is that when I want to or not, retire? A second thought from there would be, now it's time to review investments. I think a lot of people try to put it the other way around, right? Try to look at the investments first and then figure out where it goes later. I would want to see and double check for a client, do they have cash? Do they have the bonds? Do they have stocks? Maybe even others, right? Alternatives and such, real estate or things, that they have different options for how the market and how, life even might go. And then the third one would be, and it's kind of in a little bit more specific to even those bonds and stock questions, is try to figure out that balance, because you kind of want competing interests there, right? You want some funds for a rainy day and for times like now, that's really bonds. You want some funds that are going to help you grow for really ideally, right? Especially going into retirement, it could be 10, 20, 30 years. And that's really going to be equities, having those stocks work for you. So a little bit of a long answer there, because I think that's actually such a crucial question and a crucial thing you don't want to take lightly. But again, it's mapping it out and then figuring out, hey, does everything align so I'm comfortable and confident to go into a change like that?
Yeah, well, I agree, and I think some of it has to do what you want to do in your retirement life, right? Like, are you going to go sail around the world and spend a whole lot of money too? It all depends on what your goals are with your money too, and how much, what your monthly requirements are going to be when you do retire. Right, before I decide, hey, go ahead and retire, I think you need to know what your goals are, right?
Absolutely, totally agree.
I had another question. Is there why would I take money out of a 401k? Doesn't it cost me a lot? And I think you just delved into it. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'll build on that a little bit more. So absolutely. The thought here would be, this would really be for an emergency, for even more than a rainy day. But, if other options are exhausted, so if a cash reserve is exhausted, there may be flexible assets, whether it's stocks or other things are utilized. And it's, to me, financial obligations. So mortgage, rent, large credit card bills, car payments. The idea that really the government put forward is that there's likely more need. So let's give more flexibility to people, that they can tap into those assets if they need. But absolutely, it's a taxable distribution if you're taking it out of any kind of a 401k, 403b, an IRA. Technically, as an additional addendum, a Roth IRA is a different question, because a couple other rules that are important there to navigate. But conceptually, that's a tax-free use of money. So there's a chance that could apply to people. But yeah, you absolutely, please take that very seriously, that I'd want to be very, very, very careful before accessing 401k or IRA assets. It's really for making ends meet.
Yeah, and all you're really doing is not paying the penalty, but you're still liable for the taxes as income for that year.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I'm 33 years old and I have 2 kids, but I'm really concerned with unemployment. My husband and I are still working, but we find it hard to save. Should we just stop saving with all the things that are going on?
Okay. So again, I know this is a recurring theme here. I would start from the top and say, what's the incoming, what's the outgoing? Is is it possible to keep saving? I interpret a couple of different questions maybe through that, right? If it's really a concern about losing a job, I'm not exactly sure that that's what I was saying there, but if it's a question about, like, losing a job and maybe it's building up a rainy day fund, I think that could be a very valuable first step, because that is going to be a key priority in financial planning, is having a cash reserves, a rainy day fund. If it's more of a question of, hey, the market is making me really nervous and I'm seeing it up, I'm seeing it down, well, I'm seeing it down and I'm seeing it up and in between it as well, do I keep saving through that? I would say, especially given I think the age was 30 there or something.
33, it said. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. The overall thought is, even if somebody was 45 or 55, especially, to be able to save into a volatile market is actually quite often a lot of opportunity. And it's dollar cost averaging. I won't cover that a ton right now, but that's actually a great concept if anybody wants to go and Google that later. Dollar cost averaging is an extremely valuable tool for accumulating funds and shares, really, over time. So given a time frame and even a modest ability, I would absolutely think that trying to save, if at all possible, through a tough time like this, odds would be, we don't know exactly, right? But 2, 5, 10 years out will actually pay off quite well.
Yeah, well, I used to say, people don't get rich buying high; they get rich buying low, and this is a opportunity to buy low. And you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be afraid to buy at discounted prices. I mean, it's when Macy's or I guess you can't go into Macy's these days. When Lucky's has a sale on prime rib, do you stay away?
Absolutely.
That's the way you got to look at it, right? And you should always be saving unless you don't have a job, and then it is a rainy day, and right? So.
And then I think that actually, even to build on that, that is when it's important to give yourself the okay to use those funds.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will have a rainy day fund, and it's emotions. There's no doubt about it. Investing in finances is a very emotionally tough time. This only absolutely magnifies that with everything we're all dealing with. But the idea being, it's okay to use cash, and actually in many ways you want to use that cash reserve. The stock market's driving you crazy per se, but that's exactly when you don't want to maybe fine tune it or double check what's going on. Absolutely. That's okay. But just to say, oh, it's making me really scared, so I want to cash that out, but then keep my cash on hand, it's actually counterintuitive to what you're going to want to do, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope that helped our 33-year-old questionnaire. I have been furloughed and I can't keep up with my bills and my mortgage. What do I do? Should I not pay my mortgage for a while?
Okay. So at the risk of repeating myself, I would start again from the top and think about mapping things out. But to move forward from there, a couple of thoughts come to mind. I would try to figure out really what is possible, what is doable, right? And this would apply again, not only to a mortgage, but I think I said earlier, if it's rent, you could apply the same question. If it's a car payment or credit card bills, virtually any kind of financial obligation, I think two big things come to mind. One is it's going to be communication. Some people will say, and actually, Councilmember, you'll probably be able to speak to the different things about non-eviction and whatnot better than I can. So there is the ability. People do have the ability to defer payments. There is much more that just open conversation going on right now. And I think the important thing to remember is many people are also in this whole situation. So the communication is going to be key. So I would say, number one, it's reaching out to the mortgage company in this case, or the credit card company or whatever it might be, to say, hey, here's where I'm at. Here's what's going on. Here's what I can do. Here's what I'm struggling, or the numbers I'm struggling with. And to see if there's some kind of agreement that could be made there. Very seldom, is ignoring the issue going to be the helpful route. It's going to be trying to address it, right? The second thing I would say, though, to that is also keep your ears open and take very detailed notes, because I am reading a couple different times where people have not realized what loan repayment program they have committed to. The quick one I've heard a couple times is where mortgage companies have said, and this is not right or wrong, it's important to understand what the arrangement is quickly changed to be. Mortgage companies, I think, were saying, you know, hey, they'll let somebody not pay for 3 months, but then it's a balloon payment due in 3 months. So the short start of that sounds great, that, okay, I can not pay my mortgage for 3 months, but then a balloon payment, which means all 3 months are due at once, might be very problematic. So, you know, if that's the case, but that's not going to work for somebody, be careful. You don't want to agree to that. There's other options too about re-amortizing or adding on payments in the future, that kind of stuff. So I think there is communication, but then also being diligent to understand what the modification or changes might be.
Yeah, and a lot of banks are doing those changes, and even the car company loans, they're you know, call them and see how they can help. Right?
Absolutely.
That's good advice. Here's a funny one. I'm hearing that now is the time to buy gold. What do you think?
Well, the age-old financial answer is it depends, or you know, maybe.
What is the price of gold right now? Do you happen to know? Is it?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. Because I've actually, my thought was going to, I've actually had almost the identical question with oil recently, right? The price of oil literally nosedived. And then it's come back a little bit, and the question being, right, that more demand is going to be coming back. So the price of oil, maybe that's a really good opportunity. And I'd actually say they're in similar ball games, because even actually Bitcoin could be another one that you could kind of hear sometimes. That's kind of a similar question. So I would think this: are any of them right or wrong? No. Do they have a place in investing? Potentially. But I would say it's what's the context and what's the bigger picture, because individually, any one of those actually are helpful examples. They're very risky, right? A commodity has very volatile pricing, and to say that, hey, we want to, you know, and gold is the store of value. That's usually the other big thought about using gold, as a store of value. It's an inflation hedge. But sometimes that's accurate, sometimes that's dead wrong. And so you would think, and that's what diversification is all about. How do you have enough of it, if it's something you like? How do you have enough of it so that it can help you when it goes well, but it's not going to derail you or, you know, really beat you up if it doesn't go well, right? So I back to what I said earlier, I would add it as that diversification and kind of that category, right? Because there's, again, cash, bonds, stocks, and then the phrase for those, any of those, even real estate and all those, are alternatives these days, kind of a fourth category.
Yeah, alternative investments. Yeah, we've actually started getting some questions online. I don't know if one member of my staff wants to read some of them off.
Yeah,
Ella, are you there?
I can
Hi.
Oh,
hop
okay.
on here. Sorry.
All right.
Hello, gentlemen.
Okay.
So we've got a question from someone here. How should young professionals set themselves up for financial success in a challenging economy such as the one we're currently experiencing?
It's from Mason.
Super. So back to some of the similar concepts that I shared earlier, I would think, again, trying to work through, number one, it's old school, but a budget. A good old budget exercise goes so far in financial planning to figure out what's coming in, what are the expenses, what ideally can you save, you know, what kind of prioritization do you want to make of savings, and can give yourself some goals to maybe increase it. And then it's going to be looking at, you know, a handful of starting points. So it's what kind of employer plan maybe is available to you, what kind of match is offered there. Additional next steps are, you know, things like a Roth, perhaps a Roth IRA. The ability to contribute to those, especially in the early years, which is a tax-free account, just pays off so well in the future. So I would start there. And then actually the other big thought would be looking into dollar cost averaging. I mentioned it earlier, but the idea that you're just systematically buying shares over and over and over automatically, I mean, we all can acknowledge time flies by. So when you're starting out and having that in place, time will fly by. You'll look back and think, oh my gosh, all of a sudden that can be, I mean, amounts of money that are building up nicely for a young professional. So that's, yeah, great question. Glad to hear the the overall goal and objective there.
Yeah, I used to tell people that nobody plans to fail; they fail to plan. And putting money aside on a regular basis, whether it is giving up that latte or whatever daily latte and putting that into a savings account, it should be part of your goal every day or every month. Set aside 5 to 10% of your income, especially if you're young, because it can multiply, as you said, with the dollar cost averaging, right?
That's honestly part of why I got into this industry, was learning about compounding early on. There's a lot of financial jokes about compounding, but it is true, right? That if somebody, when they're in their 20s or 30s, starts saving $100 a paycheck or something like that, just it pays off in tens of thousands of dollars. And I say that, and I should also say this. One other question I'll get every once in a while is, okay, well, maybe I'm not 25, I'm X or Y, and that much closer to retirement. I would still point out, though, that it is so much more important, actually, like you just said, Councilmember, it is so much more important to plan, to actually try to figure out what is doable, where are you, if that retirement goal is 62 or 65, whatever the number is, or other goals too, right? Education of kids, buying a home, a second home, navigating, passing assets on, to understand what's going on, to make true factual decisions. It even though the goals might change and the goals might morph, to have that knowledge and that working plan is going to be so much more likely to get so close to what you want compared to, I guess, trying to wing it.
Winging it, yeah, exactly. Shane, do we have any other questions?
Oh, we do. We have another question as a follow-on to that. How long should you plan for rainy day fund to be able to last you if you're setting aside money for that?
Sure. The very textbook financial planning answer is a 3 to 6 months cash reserve. So you'd want to tally up real fast what the overall committed expenses are. So rent or mortgage, plus utilities and food and everything there. In the 3 to 6 month range is kind of a comfort level, and a range, acknowledging there's different situations, right? Is it a single person? Is it a family? Is it dual income, right? Because really, I think what's very important about that, to add on to that too, is if you have an established cash reserve, much like we talked about earlier, their savings and dollar cost averaging, now you can go forward with much more confidence when you think about investing. So a lot of people kind of mesh the two together, and that can actually really be tough as well, and hard emotionally even, when you know that you have X amount of cash reserves and you see your 401k bouncing around like we are seeing right now. To know that that cash reserve is there, there's a lot more solace, I'll call it, in that behavior, and we're much more okay with it compared to other reserves. That can be very scary, right? So, yeah, 3 to 6 months is a great range for people.
Great. Well, there's another question that would come in. We got a couple more. Should I put money in the stock market now with its recent volatility? I know you guys have touched a little bit on this in your earlier comments.
So the biggest criteria that we use and try to reinforce with clients is, what are the goals, what's the risk, and what's the time frame? And then to add into that, I would think about the diversification, right? So to put money into stocks in general, if somebody's got a couple of years, if this is saving for a kid's education and that's 10 years away, or retirement and that's 5, 10, 20 years away, I think on average, much more likely yes than no. Now, given that, you want to do your due diligence, right? So it would be thinking about, again, diversification. Is it time to try to go into look into really, either beat up categories or role specific industries? That would depend. That would really depend on the overall financial plan, the strength of the financial plan, risk tolerance, time frame. And so, again, I would go back to the dollar cost averaging. If you have the time, I would not be afraid of investing. I'd actually look at it as an opportunity, because nobody knows. We don't know what the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months hold, or plus or minus. I'm not a health expert whatsoever. What I can tell you is, let's think about 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? Odds are, especially with a good, diversified game plan and good financial plan, odds are saving into stocks through a rough market actually provides a lot of opportunity.
Great.
So speaking of the health aspect of this COVID situation, assuming it's going to be around for a while until we have treatments or cures or things. Now, there are some people I've already heard have had the disease and are having a very difficult time recovering. So say you're not able to work. Down the 6 months from now, you get COVID during a flare up in the winter, and now you're not able to work. What would you do to prepare for the possibility of something like that happening?
Well, I think it ties right back into the cash reserve question. And again, the buckets or the layers of assets, right? And that's a lot of what financial planning is about, is it's planning for risk. It's planning for the curveballs that life can throw at us. And so if ideally, that might be, a high likelihood scenario for somebody, I would want to make sure that anything that's possible to be done along the way is looked at. So get a cash reserve, right? Making sure that they have a really good handle on their budget, right? Making sure that even the things I mentioned, things like, and again, I'd want to be very cautious, probably talk to a trusted professional, a financial advisor, or your planner, or your tax professional. Maybe it would be looking at something like that 401k or IRA accessibility or Roth funds, those different types of questions. So it would be trying to look at what can you do to make sure that you're as flexible, and the phrase we'd probably use would be, have a high degree of liquidity if that's a real high likelihood scenario.
All right, thank you. And we have another question that from an anonymous attendee. Is now a good time to purchase a home? I've thought about it for some time and have enough saved for a down payment, but the economic uncertainty has made me hesitate.
Sure, a couple different thoughts. One thing I like to say to clients is the tax code is written to be a homeowner. So with that being said, again, given a understanding of what somebody's financial picture looks like would help answer that question, right? So I would think about, does that person plan to stay in that home for multiple years, right? Because I would correlate it very highly to the same question about asking to buy stocks. Stocks are very volatile right now. There's so many unknowns. It's harder to figure out or think about or even envision where we might be going. But if you add time to it, it actually reduces that risk just tremendously. So if I would do the research and figure out personally, is that person ready? Are they committed in wanting to buy the home? And financially, are they ready? And then be nimble, right? And do the research, because much like stocks, much like different categories, there are a lot of things that are, out of favor or mispriced or could be quite attractive. And so with some due diligence and research, you could figure out what you would be comfortable with. So what I say,
you know what,
oh, sure.
sorry,
Yes,
you know what I really think that they're trying to say, this anonymous person, is, do you think that housing prices will drop further? I think that's possibly what I always hear that question. Is it a good time to buy a house? And to me, I don't know, when you delve down into the real question they're asking is, are prices going to drop?
Sure. I don't know your feeling about this, Councilmember, but again, I would add time to it. I'm not a real estate professional, so I can just share a couple anecdotal, comments of what I hear. I think there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of positive attributes, and a couple cons, right? That, we have high unemployment. The big question is that going to be relatively temporary, and how quickly can the economy build back up? The interesting thing right now is I know interest rates are almost mind-bogglingly low for mortgage rates. From what I'm hearing, the demand is interestingly decent from a couple of real estate contacts and professionals that I know. But again, I go back to your risk tolerance. I go back to, we don't know. We absolutely don't know what the market is going to do. No one's ever been able to read the tea leaves precisely every step of the way. But when you add time to it and you think about, okay, am I going to be buying this house and I want to live there for 10 or 20 years? Then hey, the risk I would say is very, very low. If it's the opposite, which is I want to buy a house, but I want to hopefully be able to make money quickly, not lose money, but be able to move in a year or two, I'd say, not to say that it's impossible, but hey, your appetite for risk and your appetite for that going good or bad better be very high, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But one more thing to consider is, are you paying rent right now? If you're paying rent, you're paying somebody else's mortgage. So that's something else to think about.
Yes.
Any other questions, Shane?
Well, speaking of rent, Chair Henry has a question for us. Do you think landlords will ever be repaid their lost rent during COVID? It's difficult to collect on judgments during normal times. And this is obviously not a normal time. So that is the question.
And that question comes in through Facebook. So if anyone is on Facebook, please put your questions in the comments as we're taking our final few questions.
That I don't have a clear answer for that one. That the legality of a property owner and rent's not being paid. I know that's a hot button issue. I don't have enough. That would really be a question to go to a legal expert for. I'm not sure, Councilmember. I know that has been a hot button issue for the city too.
Yeah, well, since we extended the moratorium on evictions, I think a lot of owners are a little nervous about their renters, having excuses not to pay. But in the end, it'll be a lot harder for them to rent somewhere else, I think. And quite honestly, I think you're going to get bad renters sometimes, and you're going to get people who are truly down and out and just need some time to repay you. And I always ask owners and renters who come to me for advice is, get together with your owner, get together with your renter, and try to smooth things out, and where it's amicable for the both of you, because both of them have obligations. The renters have obligations to the owner, and the owner have obligations to the bank. And so it's not a one size. It's not the owner's really rich. Maybe some are, but they all have obligations. But the best thing to do is to get together and talk.
Right. Well, we have another question. Should we be expecting more financial help from the federal government? And that's from an anonymous attendee.
Sure. Well, short answer is it does certainly look like, it's not political commentary, but from what I understand is, because actually the numbers are amazing, and the approach has been in a couple different ways. How does the government help support people to be able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their bills, have food on their table, that kind of thing. Which that started out as a $2 trillion CARES bill. It's now $3 trillion. You might understand $3 trillion more was, on the docket, so to speak, for Congress. Still a lot to be hammered out there, from what I understand. But it does definitely seem like it. Again, political is not my expertise. Financial planning definitely is my strong suit. The other thing I would add to that, though, and this is actually very important, there's actually a lot of where the market has, I'll call it, recovered a bit, quite a bit in some categories. Some other categories not so much, right? But overall, as a whole, recovered some decent amounts. It's because of the Fed as well, right? The Federal Reserve, just the 1 minute comment here, is it's the bank of banks, and they are helping provide liquidity to the markets so that markets don't seize up, bond markets don't seize up, that there is the ability for money to move through the system. And the message from the Fed, even this weekend, if you saw Powell, he was saying, we are concerned about the market on one hand, right? He was also saying, we will keep doing virtually whatever we can to keep things working and keep the market solvent, which is a very very crucial message because it's actually very different than we had in 2008. In 2008, there's some similarities in terms of big market changes. There's also a lot of differences. And one of the biggest ones of all is the Fed saying that they are willing to keep going basically much as needed to help support the markets and to help provide liquidity, right? We're seeing it in treasury markets, muni markets, even the Fed touching into and keeping liquidity through the high yield bond markets. Those are tremendous measures to help money move through the system.
So that leads us to the next question that is relates to the big spending packages in Washington. Do you envision any crowding out of private investment given the growing deficit at the federal level? As you said, they spent $3 trillion already.
Well, so there's a couple different definitions of what crowding out can mean. I think the tough part is it's a tumultuous time. And so the way I'd phrase it, and I'd actually even apply this to other companies and other industries, right? What happens going into 2020 and what things look like coming out of 2020 can be very different. It's very likely that the larger companies that are well capitalized and they're showing that right now, right? That they are able to make it through and have the resources to be able to do so getting through. We saw very similar things when you can look at 2001, the dot-com, look at 2008 with the whole credit crisis there. The companies that started those major issues and the ones that came out on the other side were again, very different. So it could be the case that some are. I would think it's going to also be, though, that, a whole other different question that is potentially kind of even teed up with all of this is where does it go in the future? Because, the federal deficit is tremendously increasing. There's no doubt about that. And so, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a very matter of fact. I think it's valuable to get us through what we're all going through here. And the liquidity by the Fed, like I mentioned a minute ago, is very, very helpful. But there's also another question in the future, which is how does that change the economic landscape a bit as we got to figure out how to carry that debt.
Well, we have one last question, I believe, because I think maybe we have time for a couple more, but we have one out here on the city's budget. So I think this one will probably go to the council member. But of course, Jeffrey, your commentary is welcome as a constituent. Okay. How is the city of San Jose planning to deal with the budget shortfall this year? And are we at risk of losing some of the city's essential services?
Well, some of the essential services are being looked at, and I think that one of the services that we had hoped to improve was the more police officers on the street. We've actually grown our force from, a little over 800 now to 1,150 officers, but we have to keep training people and hiring. It's called Hire Ahead, so that the people who are retiring, don't impact the numbers of the force. And that program may be going away with this budget cut here. I think it's a little over a $7 million program that might get cut this year. We're looking at reducing library hours by 4 hours per library per week. And so that's another area we've frozen all hiring. So basically, if anybody retires, we're not going to be replacing them. So we were taking some measures to bring the budget under control. Not unlike the federal budget, where they just print money. That's not the case here in the city of San Jose. We have to, spend the money that are coming in through various taxes. I hope that helps. So we are looking at cutting some services, and some of them are concerning to me, but they're not super drastic yet.
And I know that in our office, we're taking a look at ways to possibly save money, to restore some of those things. There have been cuts to the water budget for parks proposed. Trying to look at how to preserve.
Yeah, the refinancing the debt on the city hall, which is a big debt. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Trying to bring down the interest rate on the debt there to see if we could lower our payments. So there are many ways that we're looking outside of basically cutting staff, but to save money. But as far as reducing services, the services that I just talked about are the ones that are the ones being discussed the most.
We have a small business question in the hopper here. As a small business owner, should I apply for the SBA loans approved by Congress recently or the PPP program? I could use the financial help, but I'm nervous about meeting the standards for retaining employees, et cetera.
Yeah, great question. So I would want to definitely work with your tax professional to help navigate that. I think much like personal financial planning, small business planning is actually very similar. And so double checking, what payroll effectively would look like with, the stature of your business, the ability to make it through this time. I would think, it's an interesting situation because I know there was a little pushback about those programs in the past, and that was really for those really large companies that had access to credit markets. So I think as a small business owner, I think there's a lot of merit in conceptually looking at how do you make sure that you have adequate resources because, let's face it, businesses are being literally told that they can't operate, right? Which is very different than a general slowdown from, something else. So I would look through the programs. I know there's the EDLI, if I remember right. There's their emergency, and then there's the PPP for small businesses. The other quick comment is the rules are changing on it, and a CPA, a tax professional, is going to know those best, and to try to double check to figure out. If I remember right, I think it's 75% has to go to payroll, and 25% can go to mortgage, utilities, other healthcare costs for payroll. And the last thought would be, if I understand correctly, it's also proportional. So part of the very minor risk would be it's a loan. Let's say somebody uses a large portion, but they don't hit all of the thresholds. If I understand correctly, so I'd want to double check with a tax professional that it's the part of it can be forgiven, part of it cannot be forgiven. So it's not an all or nothing question. You could have part of it remain and I think it's, I have to remember exactly, but I think it's like a 3% loan. So it's a very low interest loan offered by the SBA to help small businesses get through this. So I would not shy away. I'd want to look under every rock for how those work to see how they might fit.
Yeah, and there's a couple other programs that are grant programs. One was through the Opportunity Fund, the Silicon Valley Strong Initiative, $1 million, but that will help about 142 businesses. And the deadline on that has already passed. However, there's another $2 million program that is being offered as well. And that's the city's involved with that. I think we provided information about that on our website at sjd10.com. So the council member has that information out there for those who are looking for it. Or contact our office, District 10 at sanjoseca.gov. That's the email address. And Danelle Fedor from our team can get you that information. So
yeah, I just want to chime in and also say that the San Jose Office of Economic Development has dedicated staff as well to walk the small businesses through the process. And there's also local small business development centers, the SBDC, to reach out to those agencies as well, and they can advise you.
Well, I think that was the last question. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your time and your guidance. Again, this will be on Facebook, and for those of you who have later questions, you could probably friend Jeff, our guest, on Facebook, and get to know him a little bit more if you need help personally.
I do also, yeah, we have a slide here with Jeff's contact information.
Good. Thank you for putting that up.
Yes, if anyone has any questions, there's a phone number. Jeff, do you want to give out your information? It's on the slide, but for anyone listening.
Yeah, sure. And we're really eager to help. I have a couple of business partners and a very talented staff this is exactly what we help clients do is work through financial questions and especially plan for goals in good and bad times, right? And so, yeah, please feel free to email, call, do voicemail. Or if you want to, actually, the really easy format is if you just want to Google us. Our website isn't up there, but if you just Google us, Jeff Raegen, Ameriprise. We're on the Alameda. Like the council member said, I'm a District 10 resident. Our office is 1905 the Alameda. Punch that in. Go to our website. There's a quick thing in there that you can ask a question. You can ask a follow-up. We're happy to talk to people. Happy to give tidbits of information if we can work in a professional relationship. Eager to help as well. So please let us know if there's any questions from anything we covered or anything else financial planning related. We're eager to help.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you, Vin, for being with us, and thank you to all of our listeners and viewers out there today. So join me our next Wednesday, May 27th at 6:30 p.m. for a virtual chat with Jill Bourne, our librarian. She's a wealth of information, and a lot of people are asking what to do with their kids, and this is an extremely valuable information about all the services that are available in our library system, even though they're closed. So to submit questions for that in advance, please email my district office at district10@sanjoseca.gov. And please have a pleasant Memorial Day and thank a veteran if you see a veteran. Thank you all for your service. Check out my newsletter. It's on the website as was discussed. And we have lots of other guests lined up for our community connections from Parks and Recreations and the Office of Emergency Services. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. Have a great Memorial Day.